Hello and welcome to this Training Needs Analysis webinar. My name is Maeve Carabine. I'm a Skills Advisor at InvestNI and I'm going to be your host for this session. At the end of the session, there'll be a Q&A. So please, if you have any questions as we go through, don't hesitate to put them on the question board. You'll find access to that on your screen. For future reference, my number's on the screen here. It's 02890 698 293. I'm giving you that because this webinar is very much the start of our support with yourselves. I know traditionally for InvestNI, we would have been seen very much as being the organisation that only deals with larger companies or client companies. At the minute though, InvestNI are providing support to anybody who needs it. So no matter whether or not you're a big company or you're a small company or you're an independent person, please don't hesitate to get in touch. If there's any support that you require around skills, around training needs analysis, just let us know and we'll do our best to support you. I'm going to just go through the agenda for today. We're going to look at what training needs analysis actually is, where it starts and where it ends. And the reason we're going to look at that is because sometimes it can be very much seen as a one-off or a one-time exercise. What I'm trying to do is get organisations to look at it as more of a process. We're going to look at the different levels of training needs analysis and we're going to look at the methodologies and that sit behind it. In terms of why we're focusing on this today, you'll know from your own experience and from the experience that we're all living through right now that these are extremely difficult times for everybody. And everybody in any business, whatever shape or size it is going through quite a deal of flux at the minute. So from an InvestNI perspective, what we're trying to do is get organisations to not just deal with the crisis that we're in at the minute, and we've been in that crisis for quite a while, but what we're trying to do is get organisations to look towards the end of this crisis period and what can we learn from it and how do we then adapt our businesses to cope with future crises, but also what have we learned from where we are now, what do we need to do to make our companies better able to respond to customer changing needs in the future. So this is where we're coming up from the perspective here when we're talking about skills. But also looking forward past, if you can, past the current COVID-19 crisis that we're in and the changes that we're going through. The world of business is non-stop. It never stops changing. So what is the next big thing that we need to be focusing on? What's the next big thing we need to be looking at? Dare I said the B word, Brexit is looming and it's getting closer and closer and closer. So we need to get our businesses and we need to be looking for ourselves at what is going to be changing in our organisations. I'm sure everybody will have seen the adverts on TV for the customs checks and things like that that are going to be going on. But what is it that we need to be doing for our people to make sure that they have all the skills and the knowledge that they need to get us to where we need to be in the next year and the next months and the next weeks? So there's a quote on the screen here. Richard Branson, I realise, is a contentious character, and for more than one reason. But Richard Branson, this quote is attributed to him. So he said, train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And whether or not you agree or disagree with Branson's outlook and Branson's approach to business, this is one of the things that I find to be particularly true when I worked for one of Branson's brand companies. My experience in training isn't just being an advisor here within InvestNI. I have over 17 years experience in learning and development through different organisations. And at one point I worked for an organisation under the Branson brand. It was bought over by Richard Branson and is now trading as Virgin Media. So what I learned from the time that Richard came on board and bought the business over was that he really was about his people. And there was absolutely nothing that he wouldn't do in order to get his people the right skills, the right training, the right knowledge that they needed. So having found that personally, I think it's very true. But this quote for me sums up some of the questions that we get on an ongoing basis from our client base. People are always saying, you know, we need training. And I'm concerned that if I train people up, they're just going to leave me and go somewhere else where they're going to get better paid. And it's a hard point to challenge, but my question would always be, well, what if you don't train them and they stay? Because you could be left in with people in your organisation that don't have the skills or the knowledge or the ability to change and grow with your organisation. Where does that then leave you? So it's a very fine balancing act, but it's one that we're going to try and guide you through as much as we can through the rest of this session. So kicking off then, looking at training needs analysis. I know that some organisations and some different bodies will have different names for training needs analysis, learning indices or learning matrix or whatever it might be. For me, I've kept it really straightforward. For me, when I started out in training, it was training needs analysis, and I've kind of stuck to that out of habit slightly, but also because when it comes to doing this exercise, if you call it what it's always been called, people will know exactly what it's about. So you might want to change the title for your organization. That's entirely up to yourselves. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. I'm just going to try and guide you through it as much as I can. So in terms of what it actually is then, the CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Professional Development, define training needs analysis as the identification of training requirements and the most cost-effective means of meeting those requirements. So with that, they're looking at two different facets to it. It's not just about identifying the need, it's also about looking at how we meet that need. What's the best process or the best person or the best solution to actually meet those needs? So it doesn't just look at what do we go and buy, it looks then at sourcing and weighing the needs against all levels of the business. So not putting one part of the business over the other, not saying that sales is more important than dispatch or that warehousing is more important than supply chain, but looking at all the areas of the business and weighing them all up across the global shape and size of the business. But it's the essential first step to ensure return on investment for training. So at the minute, we are more than aware that budgets are at an all-time low, that budgets are being squeezed to degrees that they never have been before, and it's completely understandable. So no organisation is going to go out there and spend money on training unless they absolutely know there's going to be a return for it. So never before has training needs analysis or learning needs analysis been so essential and so important. We need to be able to give a guarantee, as much of a guarantee as we can, to our organisations that what we're going out and purchasing and spending money on is actually going to make a difference to our business. So we need to be trying to do this not just as a one-off, but on an ongoing basis. The importance of learning needs analysis is something that I always take time to highlight when we do these workshops live. And the reason for that is that from my experience working in learning and development at all levels, so I've been a frontline trainer, customer service, technical, management development. I've also worked in learning management. And one of the things that I always struggled to get time to do was this needs analysis stage, because it was always seen as being one of those things that will fit in at another stage. But if you don't get this learning needs analysis stage right, then the solutions you're putting in place are never actually going to meet those needs. So some of the outcomes and some of my justifications for taking time out of the business to actually do this is to explain to business managers and business owners that when you're carrying out training that's necessary, timely, and on time, the outcomes are listed here for you. Increase in productivity. People tend to be more productive where they have the right skills for their role. So whether they're operating machinery, whether they're managing people, whether they're managing projects, whether they're managing budgets, whatever it is your job is, if you are well trained, you're going to be better at doing that, more accurate, on time, quicker, smarter, and faster at doing it. Reducing faults, bottlenecks, and complaints, some of my favorite words right in there. When we go out to businesses to talk to businesses about doing training needs analysis or learning needs analysis, some of the key measures that we look for are just these. What are the things, what are the bits of the business that are causing you problems? Where are their faults? What are the things that go wrong on a regular basis, and how do we then put in skills and knowledge to overcome that? What are the areas of the business perhaps that are snarled up and causing problems, where there's maybe only one or two people that have the skills to operate that particular part of the business, or to sign off, or to fulfill that particular role? How do we then overcome that by sharing those skills, upskilling, cross-skilling across the organisation? And what about complaints? Nobody likes to deal with complaints. It's one of the areas of the business that we tend to shy away from quite a lot. But do you measure them? Do you know how many customer complaints you have? Because that's your brand being damaged anytime there's a complaint. However, how you deal with that complaint and how you turn that round and how you ensure that it never happens again can very well become part of the promotion of your brand, something that you become really well known for and really good at. The next one then, driving increased sales and income. Usually people think this just refers to their sales team or their sales force. It's not necessarily just about your sales force. So yes, you do need a well-trained sales force that are knowledgeable about your products, knowledgeable about your services. But what about the rest of the organisation? Because they're very much going to be your sales force too. When they're talking to their family, when they're talking to their connections, when they're talking to the people around them, are they actively promoting your business and saying what they should be saying about your business? Are they able to throw your products in there when they hear other people talking about them? Because that sort of casual upselling is also part of your brand build. So making sure that everybody in your organisation is knowledgeable and skillful is in itself a promotion tool for your organisation. And then the last two here are the things that we're all striving to, the things that we all want, not just in our own roles, but for those working around us. Increased employee satisfaction. CIPD and other bodies, lots of them have done research relating employee satisfaction, employee happiness to skills and to training. And it's always been demonstrated that there's a very strong correlation between those people who are well trained and upskilled in terms of feeling satisfied in their roles, but also feeling valued and having that genuine connection with your business. So if you really truly want people in your organization that are going to grow with your organization and stay and have a long-term future in your organization, one of the best ways to do it is to invest in them when it comes to skills. And that in turn then has this positive effect on staff morale. So these things are all the positive outcomes that we're aiming towards. And I'm telling you this so that you can go back into your organizations and positively promote the exercise and the good habit of carrying out regular ongoing learning needs and training needs analysis, but also so that you know that at the end of the day, there is a reason for doing this, and the reasons are going to be to have a really positive output for your business. Moving on from there then, to explain where it fits with the regular training and development that goes on within your organisation. I'm not going to linger too long on this because I realise probably in this call we've got all our HR people, and there's lots of people here with experience in learning development. They're probably just back for a refresh, so I'm not going to bore you with the repeat of what you learnt when you did your CIPD. However, for anybody that hasn't, for anybody that is coming to this completely fresh, one of the things that we're always asked is, when do I do this? When's the right time to carry out this training or learning needs analysis in my organisation? Should I wait till summer whenever our sales drop? Or should we do it just after Christmas when everybody's coming back in the new year with New Year's resolutions? And I wish there was one answer. There really isn't. What I'm trying to get organisations to do is not just do training needs analysis as a one-off. I would very much like organisations to look at this as regularly as you look at the rest of your management information. So if you keep it at the top of the agenda, if you keep it in your management meetings, if you keep it in your one-to-ones, if you keep dealing with learning needs analysis as an ongoing process, as an ongoing integral part of your culture and your business, it becomes part of your culture then, and it becomes part of your organization. So the way the process should work, and this is the sort of the CIP step by step, is that you do your training needs analysis first. This is the top circle here. You start off with your training needs analysis. From there then, when you're looking at learning solutions, the next stage you should go into then when you've identified the needs is the design stage. And this is where you sit down and start looking for solutions. What's out there, what's available, who can actually do it, what providers do we have, who's local to us, do we need to travel to them, etc., etc. And you then move into that design stage, which is basically starting to pull together what people need to know, how we're going to get that learning to those people, and how we're going to ensure that learning has actually hit the ground, that they're actually able to do it. So that demonstration of skills. At this stage, then you move through to delivery, which is the bit that we're all familiar with when you see the people that are in charge of training in your organisation booking rooms and standing up in front of an audience and actually delivering the training, or those people that are in your organisation that are the guides or the mentors that sit beside people and show them how to use machinery and show them how to do the hands-on tasks and skills in your organisation. The last stage then should be, after you do the training, you should evaluate what you've done. So the evaluation stage is looking at what the need was, looking at how we fill that need, and then going back to say, have we properly filled that need? Are you now able to do these things? Do you now know these things that you needed to know? Have we effectively given you the skills, the knowledge, and the education that you needed in order to do the role and perform this role? Now, as I say, over 17 years experience in doing this in all shapes and sizes of organizations. And it doesn't take too much imagination for you to figure out, and you probably know this from your own experience, that in most organizations, when you have trainers or a training team in your organization, they very much are seen to be providing value for money when they're standing up delivering training. And that isn't an unusual thing, and it's not an odd thing either, because very much if you're paying people's wages to be trainers, you want to see them doing training. That's where the business end tends to be viewed at. However, one of the biggest challenges for any trainer, a training manager, a learning development manager, is actually being able to go back to the organization and say, yes, we can do lots of training. However, if we're not training out the right stuff, we're not really going to give the organization back what it needs. We're not fulfilling those gaps. So in most organizations that I've come across, you were lucky if you got the time to do a really good design project, spending time out of the business doing really good training design. But before that, then the need stage was very much sort of shoehorned in whenever we got a spare day or a spare minute, a bit of downtime, we would have done a bit of needs analysis. So what I'm trying to do is get organizations to think from the start that this is an essential part, that if you don't do this right, then your outcomes won't be right. And that's what I found from experience. Not doing needs analysis means you just train the same stuff over and over and over again. And I've been that soldier standing at the front of a room day in and day out for weeks and weeks and weeks on end and seeing the same results. So if in your organization you've been really clever and you've managed to convince your managers and your owners and your directors that you need to take some time to do a really good needs analysis, there is no chance that you're going to be able to convince them then that you need to take time out of the end of training then to do this evaluation. So what I try and do is get organizations to do it as an ongoing basis, rather than taking it as two separate exercises, which very much would have been the CIPD thinking. For real life, in real situations, in real organizations where we are flat to the mat and constantly running to catch up with ourselves. If you can do some needs analysis on an ongoing basis, we can make that fulfill the evaluation for your organization. Now, I think probably the first time that I was asked to do really good training evaluation probably would have been when I started working in the training team in Invest NI a couple of years ago. So it's not something that businesses tend to hang their coat on too much, and it's not something that becomes expected from most organizations because they're focusing on the delivery end of their organizations. And research from CIPD and others has shown that evaluation tends to be really truly the bottom of the list for businesses when it comes to looking at the key metrics for learning development. So you may find that in your organization, nobody pushes you to do a learning evaluation, and that's grand. However, we need to then keep going into this needs analysis cycle so that we're making sure the training we're putting in next year's budget and the following year's budget actually does meet the needs of the business. So I'm going to talk about different needs analysis methods, and you'll be able to see as we go through, we're going to match them up then with evaluation outcomes at the end. And we'll take you right the way through that.